Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're basically opening up a classified dossier on one of the United Nations' newest, most closely watched, and honestly most heavily scrutinized institutional innovations. We're going to decode exactly what it takes to unlock a premier leadership role within the UN system. So, if you want to understand how the UN actually recruits top-tier talent for these incredibly high-visibility mandates, well, you're in exactly the right place. Okay, let's dive right into this. The position we're looking at today is the Chief of Section for Partnerships, Advocacy, and Communications over at the newly formed United Nations Youth Office in New York. This is a P5 level role. And listen, this isn't just another management job. The stakes here are incredibly high. Why? Because this office is building its credibility from scratch, right in an environment that has historically treated youth engagement as, just a background theme rather than a dedicated top-tier priority. Landing this role literally means proving you are the exact right person to change that narrative globally.
To conquer this challenge, here's our map for today. We'll start with the UN's new youth mandate, then the strict resume requirements, decoding the 5 competencies, navigating the Inspira gauntlet, and finally, executing the chief role.
Let's hit Section 1, the UN's new youth mandate, building an identity from scratch. Now, like I mentioned, you aren't just stepping in to manage an existing portfolio. You are building an institutional identity from the ground up. Every single thing you do in this role, and honestly, every single answer you give in an interview, has to trace directly back to Resolution 76/306. This is the foundational mandate to promote meaningful, inclusive, and effective engagement of youth across the UN. This office was created precisely because there was this massive institutional gap. You've got to remember that your actions aren't just technical. They're all about credibility and institution building. If you can't logically connect your past work to this specific mandate, you just won't survive the screening process. Moving on to Section 2, the strict resume requirements, the blueprint. So, the crucial point here is absolute coherence across this timeline. Evaluators are literally trained to look for absolute coherence across these numbers. Check this out. You need 10 years of progressive experience in hard administrative areas, budget, finance, HR. But that alone just isn't enough. You must logically bridge that raw technical administration into at least 5 years of international youth-focused programming, plus multi-year experience in campaign formulation and leading resource mobilization. It's like a giant puzzle. If your narrative doesn't convincingly tie your administrative seniority to external-facing youth advocacy, you won't be shortlisted, no matter how good your raw experience looks on paper. And of course, the linguistic demands are super rigid. You absolutely must have UN Level 2 proficiency in English across reading, writing, listening, and speaking. Furthermore, a Level 1 proficiency in another UN language, like French, Arabic, Mandarin, Spanish, or Russian, is highly desirable. Now, why does this actually matter? Well, because this role demands that you communicate persuasively with incredibly diverse global audiences, everyone from marginalized youth groups all the way to member state delegations. You simply can't do that if you don't have the linguistic reach. Let's jump into Section 3, decoding the 5 competencies, the secret weapon. The real differentiator here is a stark contrast in expectations. This is where candidates either prove they're true institutional innovators or they fail by relying on generic UN answers. For standard senior UN roles, you usually see an emphasis on competencies like planning and organizing or judgment and decision-making. But for this Youth Office P5 role, the focus sharply shifts to creativity and managing performance. Listen, if you prepare for this using a generic UN interview framework, you are going to leave yourself dangerously underprepared. Evaluators want to see if you can take calculated risks on unusual ideas rather than just being bound by traditional approaches. And this brilliantly illustrates the full required profile, which combines professionalism, communication, creativity, leadership, and managing performance. All of these combine to demand someone who can formulate clear communication strategies, actively seek to improve programs, serve as a role model, and delegate accountability while monitoring progress. You really have to prove, with real-world evidence, that you can motivate a team and drive change across an entire intergovernmental system. Which brings us to Section 4, navigating the Inspira gauntlet, tactical execution. All right, this is the grueling tactical phase of the UN hiring machine. You basically have to treat their bureaucratic platform, Inspira, like a strategic puzzle to be solved. Let's walk through this gauntlet step by step. Step 1 is optimizing your P11 profile, essentially translating all your partnership and advocacy experience into the exact evaluation criteria they seek. Step 2 is a flawless Inspira submission, and remember, absolutely no amendments are allowed after you click submit, before that 11:59 p.m. New York time deadline. Step 3 is the evidence-based competency interview, where vague claims will immediately fail. And Step 4 involves strict reference checks to verify everything you've claimed. Consistency between your application and your referee's accounts is a massive governance and credibility issue for sure. It's not just a technicality. Oh, and for internal secretariat staff, it is also absolutely crucial to note that you face strict geographic and lateral move requirements under Administrative Instruction ST/AI/2025/2. In the UN system, eligibility rules like this aren't just procedural footnotes, right? They're treated as a highly substantive dimension of the entire process. If you don't meet the lateral move requirements, you simply can't play the game.
Finally, let's look at Section 5, executing the chief role, the endgame.
Because getting the job is only half the battle, right? Stepping into the reality of the New York duty station is where the real work actually begins. Now, what's really interesting here is what they want from you on day 1. You must build habits of quantification and concrete outcome description, campaigns launched, partnerships forged, resources mobilized, youth reached. The UN values data-driven, verifiable evidence above all else. You cannot just claim you engaged people. Nope. You need to show the exact scale of campaigns you've launched and the hard resources you've mobilized. Your success relies entirely on tangible, verifiable evidence. In reality, you'll be directly advising the Assistant Secretary General on youth affairs. You'll be providing substantive input to reports from massively influential intergovernmental bodies. We're talking the ACABQ, the Committee for Program Coordination, ECOSOC, and the General Assembly. But alongside that high-level governance, you are heavily expected to embody progressive leadership. Upholding a 50-50 gender balance and enforcing zero tolerance on sexual exploitation, abuse, and misconduct aren't just HR policies. They are constitutional standards of leadership under the UN Charter that you absolutely must execute daily. So, after seeing all this complex maneuvering, the incredibly strict resume requirements, and the massive demand for genuine institutional creativity, I want to leave you with this final question. Do you have the verifiable evidence and creative vision to step into the UN's New York headquarters and give global youth a voice? It is a monumental leadership challenge demanding a perfect blend of bureaucratic mastery and bold, innovative advocacy. That's how you decode the UN system. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep learning.